Hello and welcome back to Mother Tongue, your eyes, ears and finger on the pulse for all parents around the world. Let's get going, shall we? We are so incredibly excited to welcome Kate Longden to Mother Tongue. Kate, how are you?
I'm very good. Yeah, very well, thank you.
Good.
To be chatting to you across in your sunny climes.
I know, I always feel a bit smug at this time of year when we have guests on from the UK or America and the weather's just starting to get really nice here and it's just starting to get really shit for you guys. But I promise you, the tables do turn. When it comes to like May and we're starting to live in an oven and you're heading into summer, that's when people are really like, oh yeah, oh poor you. I'm just going to go to the pub now and sit in the pub beer garden and have a beer. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll just sweat inside all the time for the next 4 months. Thanks so much. So yeah, don't worry, your time will come where you can be very smug. But for all our lovely listeners that don't know you, Kate, can you please tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Indeed, yes. I am mum of two. I've got an 8-year-old called Olive and a 3-year-old called Moses. And my other baby is my business called the Food Doula, which is an ecosystem of edible support delivered and taught for all different phases and stages of life. It's primarily a meal delivery company based in the UK, and sort of at the moment growing other arms for kind of having a herbal apothecary. So being able to just support people with, kind of ready to eat convenience foods and also tools in which to kind of, build their own pantry and build their apothecary library to kind of, nourish themselves as widely as possible.
I mean, the word apothecary library is just, it just sounds so thrilling. I feel like I've got a
I think,
million questions on that alone.
yeah.
I
It's
love
quite funny to
this.
say, apothecary. So essentially, the theory with it and the aim with it is that instead of kind of reaching for ready-made herbal teas, that we actually build our own kind of library of medicinal herbs at home, and we come back to the kind of wisdom of home herbalism and sort of learn about herbs that are going to support us not only at different stages in life, but different times of the month, there are really so many herbal kind of supports that we can lean on in order to support our health and to support kind of feeling well rather than just kind of going to a shelf in a supermarket and sort of accepting that this tea will make you calm. It's sort of learning a bit about those herbs and just building that into our days and also kind of teaching our children being around that as well and being around kind of, just turning to our kitchen medicine, whether that's, making meals or using herbs to kind of, aid different challenges.
I love this. Where did this particular passion come from? Is this something that you kind of experienced through your own pregnancy and motherhood journey?
Yeah, so I mean, as I've gotten sort of deeper and deeper into the postpartum space and also kind of supporting through pregnancy and as well as just obviously nourishing myself kind of all the time, trying to, support my nervous system. I think I've just got really into using herbs in the last 2 years to, alongside food. I think it's the other sort of side of it that it has been a bit lost. I think we do use lots of culinary spices that are have medicinal properties such as ginger and turmeric, and that's those are quite widely known kind of things that we turn to for our cooking and stuff. But there are so many more kind of harder to gather herbs which is sort of very much used in folk herbalism, in ancient traditions such as Ayurveda or Chinese medicine, and even Western herbalism but that can kind of aid our day-to-day ailments and just be really like a proactive support rather than we're in really this model of sort of health where everything seems to be quite reactive, and I'm really passionate that we focus it more on proactive health and kind of those building blocks and the scaffolding and the framework we can have in place to kind of try and avoid those reactive kind of situations.
So I love this. I'm going to ask now. I mean, I want to talk a lot about pregnancy and postpartum nutrition today, but you mentioned there kind of building the blocks for proactive health. For someone like me who genuinely has no idea about what you've just said, where would be a really good place to start kind of building those blocks for proactive health?
I think the first thing really is what I've learned sort of through myself and lots of research is we we really have come away from listening to our bodies. And so, there's that really sort of cheesy thing of the answers you have are within you. But really, but really, our body is always talking to us in terms of, our digestion or sort of feelings of anxiety or whatever. And it's sort of, we, a lot of the time, we are actually turning away from all those little whispers. And so it's kind of about, I like to call it the inquiry diet, where actually you're not following a protocol that someone has sort of said is going to work for you. It's really just, everything is an inquiry, and it's just a case of slowing down enough to notice how we both sort of our internal environment is affected by our external environment, or about how our internal environment is affected by what we're consuming. And that might be focusing in on a sort of nervous system, on your blood sugars, and kind of, if you're getting those sort of jittery afternoons or sort of wanting to reach for sugar and snacking, and it's sort of, okay, well, interesting that, how what can I do differently? What kind of micro changes can I make in order to minimize that happening? And for me, a huge one for that is a protein rich but a savory breakfast has worked so well for me. I think we've got so stuck in sort of toast and porridge and cereal, and and it's like we come back to the sort of Eastern traditions a lot. When you're in India, when you're in Thailand, when you're in, they're not eating these things. They're eating what they eat for lunch and dinner as well. They're
Yes.
having noodles and rice, and I love that's one of my favourite things about travelling in Asia. I'm like, I want noodles every day for breakfast. And
Same
so I
every
just started
day.
doing that. I just started doing that now, and it's sort of just think we get a bit rigid, and it's sort of actually coming back to one, what do we want? Because
Yeah.
if we want noodles for breakfast, have bloody noodles for breakfast. But also, why are we wanting that? It probably is because it is making us feel better. It's making us feel good, and we often feel so good when we're on holiday in those countries because you're eating totally differently. And so sort of those sort of breakfasts, as well as eggs is a big one. I mean, for me that is just the best way to start the day,
Yeah.
with eggs and veg. And my favorite kind of go-to is I kind of have endless packets of those, the pre-prepared quinoa, because quinoa is one of the only complete plant proteins, that it's hard to find a complete protein in the plant world. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it does have, it's not, if you dress it up with enough flavour,
Yeah.
it's not, it's quite a unique taste, isn't it? But I kind of mix a tablespoon or two in with my kind of sautéed green veg and fried eggs, and I just do it all in one pan. So you're not,
Yeah.
and it does sound like, oh, I don't have time to do that, but it takes 2 minutes. Once your pan's hot, you kind of bish bash bosh, and
Exactly.
and that just really nourishes me until kind of early mid afternoon. And I'm not having those slumps. And I think
Yeah.
what our bodies need as women in the morning is to be nourished.
Yeah.
I think the sort of fasting topic, like it's a hard one because it's sort of, we need nourishing. We are made differently to men, and for me, being nourished, not having coffee before nourishing myself, because that just sends my blood sugars on a total roller coaster, and then I'm like, oh, I'm feeling a bit kind of anxious in the afternoon,
Yeah.
and it will be the fallout. So I think it's just inquiring, just moving around different, trying different things, and noticing how you feel is so powerful.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I so agree with what you say about having protein in the morning. I've started doing that, a big focus on that during this pregnancy. And I feel like the difference in how I've eaten during this pregnancy has been so different to the subsequent ones because I've started my day in the right way. And when I don't, if I do for any reason start my day with something more sugary and less high in protein, then I feel dreadful and so lethargic and so tired by the middle of the day that I just need to go and have a nap, which is just,
Totally.
not conducive. But I wanted, obviously, you are an expert in this space, and a mum of two, as you mentioned. When you found out you were pregnant first and second time, what changes did you instantly make from a nutrition standpoint to make sure that you were getting the nutrients and the variety you needed to sustain and grow a healthy pregnancy?
So, firstly, I think the difference in my two pregnancies and postpartums was huge because the first time round, I was your classic sort of, it didn't take that long to get pregnant. So I didn't go massively into sort of research on, what I could be doing to support sort of fertility and pregnancy. And I mean, I've always loved food. I'm a self-taught chef, but cooking is such a passion of mine. So, I mean, in pregnancy, the first time round, I don't feel like I changed that much apart from not drinking. Um, I kind of went through it a little bit blindly, I think.
Yeah,
Um, I sort of, I even thought, well, I like my steak rare, and French women don't have it, well cooked, so I'm just going to carry on. I did follow my intuition a little bit with that, in terms of I wasn't totally sort of, oh, well, I'm going to follow those guidelines necessarily. I really, with that, with anything around sort of safety, it's often the quality is so important and knowing the provenance and stuff. But so first pregnancy was, yeah, a little bit uninformed, basically. And the same went for the kind of postpartum. I think I did do a bit of batch cooking, but it lasted about 2 days. And then, I very naively in pregnancy thought, well, like the baby's going to nap, and I love cooking so much that I will make time for it, and that was so far from like the truth and what is actually realistic, that we just turned to like takeaways, and that's obviously not at all what my body needed.
no.
So that it was after that that I founded the business, kind of through, yeah, knowing that I needed to do something differently and that it was so important for postpartum women to be super nourished. And so the second time round was a lot different. That was 5 years later, and I really, really prioritized nourishment in pregnancy because I sort of learned that. So for the first trimester, certainly, your baby is taking nutrients from your existing stores. So a lot of the time people think, oh, I'm not eating well, the baby's not getting what it needs. The baby is getting exactly what baby needs.
Yeah,
It's about us then trying to build those stores, even for postpartum. In pregnancy we are building stores for postpartum, and you're kind of, you're really adding to just trying to find equilibrium because it is so depleting. Pregnancy is very depleting. Um, so yeah, second time round was a total game changer, and that's interesting that yeah, for you as well. It's sort of, yeah, this is it. We're in this age of knowledge and wanting to be informed, and it's really powerful, and I think it will hopefully sort of change the tide a little bit on our experiences of after birth.
I hope so. I really hope so. And I definitely plan to do some batch cooking at some point, to prepare for postpartum. But then you mentioned then about red meat, and, it's more important about where it's sourced than necessarily how it's cooked. And I feel like we've had a lot of conversations recently. I've had a lot of conversations about the role of organ meat, red meat, fermented food, all that kind of stuff, unpasteurized food. during pregnancy. What are your thoughts on all these kind of historically taboo things versus what the data is now kind of showing us nowadays? Do you think having a bit of red meat that's not totally sizzled is fine if it's organic and grass fed or pasture raised or whatever it is? What are your thoughts around all these things?
So my thoughts are, firstly, that it's interesting that, yeah, we think, oh, it's been a taboo. I mean, actually, if you're looking at ancient traditions, always back to ancient traditions, these are foods that were always in their diet. And I think it's just about being mindful. I hope that anyway, we're mindful about the quality of, the amount of meat versus quality. I think
Yes.
if we're having a little bit, you can get so much other protein from plants, absolutely. But, the meat that we eat is ideally, not, it's had the best life. I'm such a believer in, ingredients that are taken care of take better care of us. It's as simple as that. I think it's a case of with red meat, for example, if you're making a stew or it's sort of, we'll halve the meat in the recipe and add some legumes and then make something else with the other half of, so we don't have to just have these kind of really heavy meat dishes, we can bulk them out. And I think it's about just also veering off of recipe, I'm not a recipe follower myself.
No, me neither. Me neither.
But I think it's kind of looking at it and thinking, okay, I can just split this 500 grams of meat that I've got. I can split it in half and make 2 different meals with it or whatever, and just bulk it out with more lentil, with your plant proteins, basically. I think in pregnancy, I definitely had the occasional steak, and I didn't have it well done, but it was like, it was good quality meat.
Yeah.
And there's that thing as well, like when you're traveling, there's sometimes more risk from unwashed vegetables.
Exactly.
It's so nuanced, and I think, it's a mixture of, yes, informing yourself, but also just, we can get so drowned out by guidance, and and obviously there's a place for it. But I think also, if we inform ourselves enough and then make choices like good quality meat, you can also just give your body what it's asking for as well. I think in pregnancy it's not so much of a thing, but it's in postpartum, the only thing with red meats is to make sure that they're slowly cooked and really easy to digest. Whereas obviously, in pregnancy, it can be an issue, digestion. So that's just something to bring in pregnancy as well, is making sure that things are, easier to absorb. So, not having as many raw or cold foods. On the organ meat thing, again, liver, for example, beef liver
Yes.
is the most iron-rich food on our planet. There's lots of, yes, we do need to be careful of quantities, but having a little bit of liver in your bolognese and kind of, because people go, oh, liver, yuck, but you can disguise it. Actually, you can kind of chop it super fine and just build it into your weekly ragu or whatever. There's a beef liver supplement which is brilliant. There's an amazing resource which I will hopefully you can put in the notes. So
Definitely.
it's Lily Nichols. She is fantastic author of many, many brilliant books, and one of them is Real Food for Pregnancy. And she also has an incredible website. It's really the most up-to-date science on what you need nutritionally, what is safe, and it's invaluable. I think it's so good. I think everyone should definitely look at her stuff.
Amazing. I'm definitely going to link that in the show notes. And then in terms of like things that we should be having in our cupboard, if there are certain foods that we should be eating on a regularish basis to make sure that we're kind of supporting a healthy pregnancy through nutrition. If there were 5 things, let's say, that you say we should have in our cupboards, what would those 5 things be?
Okay. I'm going to say legumes,
Yeah.
so lentils, um, which again are so versatile. You can have them, in with your eggs at breakfast. You can
Yes.
have absolutely. I kind of have lentils. I'll either put lentils in with my veg or the quinoa or whatever. But yeah, lentils can go in everything, even if it's a little bit, even in your smoothie in pregnancy. Just put a teaspoon of lentils in. It all gets kind of masked by all the other flavors. I think we don't necessarily need to think, oh, I don't want a lentil curry again. Or it's like just a teaspoon here and a tablespoon there
Yeah.
across the day is great. Also, bone broth is a huge one for pregnancy and postpartum. So you can obviously make your own and freeze it in portions and have it in the store cupboard, or you can buy it. Um, it's it is the base of all of the meals that I make for my business. It's such a nourishing, nutrient and mineral rich thing to add in during this time. It's very high in amino acids and collagen, and so you're building. It's really the building blocks are having good protein and amino acids, and so broth is such a good way to use in meals, and also to start the day with a cup of bone broth in both pregnancy and postpartum. Firstly, that kind of really warm, warm, nourishing, rich, nutrient-rich start to the day. But also, that's really going to help your body to absorb fat-soluble vitamins across the day.
Yeah.
So it's just such a good way to, begin a day, kind of get that digestive fire going, kind of warm up your belly, and and just benefit from the sort of collagen-rich
I love that.
deliciousness of it.
I love that. I actually love bone broth, and I swear by it, and I try and cook most of our food. If we have quinoa or rice or orzo or anything like that, I try and cook it for us or the kids in bone broth, so it absorbs all of that goodness. This is going to sound like a really stupid question, but I mean, I make chicken bone broth with obviously a chicken carcass if we have a roast chicken, but I very rarely buy meat on a bone. But could you make lamb broth, or is beef bone broth the best?
No, I mean, like the lamb broth is also fantastic. Beef broth, fantastic. Chicken, I think is
The best.
one that we make the most because we're kind of cooking it on the bone more. But also, you
Yeah.
can go to your butcher and ask for bones, and he might charge you, he might not. Sometimes they just give them away. I think, if you're making bone broth, a really good tip is to add a little splash of apple cider vinegar, because this helps to draw the collagen out of the bones. Adding a little splash of apple cider vinegar is a must.
Oh wow, that's a good tip. I
think,
didn't know that.
yeah, and also, I think we can make a kind of plainish base so that it's versatile, or you can really go in on kind of adding in herbs, and there's obviously so much you can add in.
Wow.
Shiitake mushrooms is like
Yum.
a great thing to add in. Goji berries for postpartum.
Oh.
Red dates is fantastic. Nettle. You can go. You can obviously go wild with things you can add into broth, or you just have your base, and then you can add those things kind of depending on what meals you're making with the broth.
Oh, so interesting. So interesting. And so I'm now coming back to the first trimester before we move on to preparing for postpartum. As mentioned, it's really common for most women to feel absolutely dreadful during the first trimester, and a beige diet is very, very normal. If there was one thing or 2 things that we should try and incorporate in our diet, just so we're getting some goodness, other than bone broth, is there anything else you would recommend us trying to eat, just to kind of give our body the extra boost of goodness that it probably is so much looking for?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, yeah, beige is a big one. So if we think about what we can make with eggs, you can make waffles, and that sort of seems like,
Yes.
oh, that's a beige.
Oh, I
You
love
can
the
use a
waffle.
nice, yeah, you can use, a gluten-free flour, buckwheat flour, also adding collagen into all of these things, kind of, collagen that is dissolvable, tasteless. Add a tablespoon of that into your pancake mix, into your waffle mix. I think you can obviously make omelette, frittata, so kind of going into making things with, your high quality eggs, adding in collagen, you ending up with a beigey product, which is kind of hitting that beige
Love
spot.
this.
Um, but yeah, pancakes, omelettes, um, and just I think also you can add in. It's always thinking, okay, how can I make this more nourishing? So with your pancake mix, it might be adding collagen. You might add a tablespoon of pureed butter beans or something like really plain that's going to get lost in the pancake mixture,
Love this.
but is really adding kind of fiber and plants, because it is so hard. I think we really beat ourselves up that first trimester for kind of eating what we deem to be crap food. But um, like I said before, it's knowing that baby's actually getting what it needs, because
Yeah.
they're sort of sucking all of your
Yes.
previous nutrient stores during that time of such rapid growth. Um, but yeah, I think those kind of things. Also, it's really a really important part of a healthy pregnancy diet is just minimizing guilt, shame, stress.
Yeah. So true.
Because, we could be eating the most nutrient rich diet, but if we're kind of a bit um, hypervigilant about it and anxious about it, actually our body is not assimilating those nutrients well. So, one thing is when you're eating to really slow down, take some really slow, deep breaths before eating, try and calm your nervous system, and then your body isn't in that kind of jittery, your body is fully then focusing on digesting what you are eating. And so I think slowing down, but also just, don't beat yourself up. I think that is also not going to be giving your body the goodness that it needs, that
Yeah.
stress. And I
Yeah.
think it's just, if there's any time to kind of really practice that self kindness, it is starting during pregnancy, how you need to go on in motherhood, because it's a tough gig. And it's important that we begin to, listen to what we need, ask for what we need, delegate to people, put boundaries down. That is only going to stand us in the best position for kind of entering this totally new phase of life. And also, I always say to people, I think one way in which you can begin to parent together, as in with your partner, as
Yeah.
soon as those lines come up on the pregnancy test, is to for the partner to be, responsible also for nourishing you and for researching and finding out what you need, and, going and adding in all of these like great pantry essentials and making sure that, you're eating them. That's a way that they can begin to parent and they can begin to nurture their child, is by nourishing the mother.
I love this. That is a good tip for all dads out there. I definitely need to be saying this to my husband. And then moving on to postpartum. So this is obviously something that I'm very much invested in at the moment. How can we prepare for postpartum so that we're healing optimally?
So, right, I think let's go with the main
Loaded question.
principle. Yeah, okay, this is like such a meaty, fun topic. Um, okay, where to start? I think I'll start by saying that the importance of postpartum healing is that it is really a window where, if we're nourished, that ripple effect will be so felt through our motherhood. we're in, postpartum health is now becoming a really big topic, and that's because there is such a big maternal mental health crisis. And what we're seeing through research, there's an amazing guy called Dr. Oscar Serelak who has written a book called The Postpartum Depletion Cure. And it basically says, so many of the struggles that we have in motherhood are from depletion, and these are rooted in nutrient deficiencies. So much is taken from us, during pregnancy and obviously in the process of birth. And that's even with a sort of straightforward, in inverted commas, birth, let alone if you've lost lots of blood, for example. And
Yeah.
so our nutrient stores are in the pits, basically.
Oh,
And
God.
so it is so important, to be having really nutrient dense foods at this time. And how we can prepare for that is really as early on in pregnancy or as late on. It's never too late to begin to stock your cupboards with
Yeah.
things and I'll go into a little bit about that in a minute. Stock your cupboards. When people ask you what you need, you say meals for the freezer. Can you make meals for the freezer? Can you make some snacks for me? Can you make some flapjacks for me that I could put in the freezer? Filling that freezer is really going to be it's your North Star in postpartum. I think that there are so many variables in postpartum, and one of the things that we can control is how we are nourished. We can't really control their sleep, unfortunately.
No. Tried that.
No. We can absolutely get support with feeding, but that's again something that we just don't know how that journey is going to go.
Yeah.
And so the thing that we can curate is nourishment, and that will have such a huge effect on how we feel and how we heal. So what we're focusing on in postpartum is in those early weeks is supporting compromised digestion. Obviously, you birth your baby, your organs are like, oh, where do I belong? Oh, I'm just floating around inside you. There's this big empty space. And so digestion really needs a helping hand. So what we want for that is really warm foods, and that's both warm in temperature. So we're avoiding cold and raw food because that obviously takes our body, it is harder for our body to digest. So we're thinking about warm in temperature, but also warm energetically. So what we're thinking about with that is spices that are energetically warming. So ginger, cloves, cinnamon, cardamom, turmeric. So warmth is probably, if I had to give you one headline, it would be warmth. Okay, and that's also like keeping yourself warm, wearing socks, keeping the draft out, because you have this big in ancient traditions in sort of Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, the reason for keeping warmth in the body is because you have excess sort of wind, you have this excess space in which we have to try and warm it up and not kind of let the heat come from us. And so warm foods, so you're thinking slow cooked soups and dals and curries and broths, it's both morning, lunch and evening. Another one is so digestive support, obviously nervous system support as well, where it's an extremely sort of emotionally vulnerable time. And so again, having foods that aren't going to send us on a sort of blood sugar roller coaster are great. And obviously most people have a hugely rampant sweet tooth in postpartum. I know I did, and I don't most of the time, apart from in pregnancy and breastfeeding. It was just like, woo, off the scale.
Yeah, me
and
too.
And so it's either sourcing or making really nutrient dense snacks. So you can use dates to sweeten things. You can use agave syrup. You can use coconut sugar. I think yeah, using dried fruits to sweeten is brilliant, and then having seeds and nuts and oats and like all of these things that can be made into delicious snacks, or making your own dark chocolate with cacao butter and cacao powder and honey, and then adding lots of
Ooh.
nourishing things in. Again, it's not something that it's not easy to prepare for postpartum in this way, but it is if we think to how much we prepare for our weddings, okay, how much investment we put into our
Yeah.
weddings, how much investment we put into getting our body, feeding ourselves in a way that will make us look a certain way on the wedding day. It's like, okay, now it's time to think about how we're going to feel. Yes, we're going to be leaky, creaky, and lumpy, but if we feel good through the food that we eat, that is just going to do so much goodness to both our experience and our baby's experience.
So
Um,
true.
so yeah, warm foods and very hydrated, making sure that you're really, really well hydrated. Again, we're not having cold water, we're having at least room temperature water, but ideally, we're actually having just lots of herbal infusions, lots of warm spiced milks. And so the way that we can prepare for this is by, gathering our loose herbs. I have got a postpartum herbal collection coming out in the next few
Ooh.
months.
Ooh, keep us
Um,
posted on that.
yeah, definitely will. So yeah, gathering great herbs, making some lovely golden milk mixes, so with turmeric and ground ginger and like your chai spices that you can then heat up with milk. Again, this is about preparing your partner and those people around you as well to be like, so I've made, or can we make together? It's a lovely thing to do together to like prepare your kitchen to nourish you, because it's also going to nourish them.
Yeah.
It means that you've had just so much more time with the baby if the kind of you're not having to make things from scratch. So it's yeah, getting these things in place, getting good snacks in place. Every time you're making a meal in pregnancy, you're making extra. You're making extra. You're putting it in the freezer. You're adding to your bank. Your library of like postpartum investment, basically.
I love
Um,
this.
and that's just really going to take the pressure off. And I think going into postpartum the second time for me, going into postpartum knowing that I was just going to be fed really well. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of had the benefit of I'd been then running obviously the food business, so I just had a chest freezer full that I just made extra, and we were nourished so well that first month, and it made such a huge difference. So it's as much as informing your partner, I think, also
Yeah.
then learning together. Okay, what am I going to need? Also, breakfast is one that they can certainly be in charge of making you eggs and making you heating up some dal. I think yeah, we want really easily digestible foods. So eggs might not be the one for the first couple of weeks, depending on how you, how you deal with digesting eggs. Some people it can bung them up, but it doesn't so much me. But really, yeah, focusing on dals and obviously it's great to have porridge, but you're adding, adding seeds and adding tahini or adding your nut
Yeah.
butters so that you've got that protein alongside it, and also adding in a great one for porridge is adding in cooked quinoa. Just putting a tablespoon in, and so it's yeah, you're increasing your protein, which is also going to help with with that blood sugar support.
I love this. And Kate, if you were to give us three of your favourite recipes for postpartum, what are they?
So first would be kachari, which is yeah, it's an Ayurvedic lentil and rice porridge essentially.
Love
The
this.
um, the Chinese version is congee, which is just rice. But yeah, I love kachari, which is mung dal and basmati rice. Interestingly, obviously there's so much focus on whole grains and whole grain rice, but in that early postpartum, basmati rice is much more easily digested. So I would go with basmati rice over a brown rice.
Mm-hmm.
So you're cooking your lentils and your rice with ideally broth, a bone broth, or if you're plant-based, then maybe a broth with shiitake and seaweed. Adding seaweed is so mineral rich that to a plant broth, that's really beneficial. So yeah, you're cooking your lentils and your rice in broth, and then you're adding loads and loads of ghee. Now, ghee is a clarified butter, so you want grass-fed, ideally. Clarified butter, so you've removed the milk solids, so it's much easier on your digestion. And in Ayurveda, is like the golden liquid. It's the most revered ingredient. And so adding ghee to, well, anything really, but adding ghee to your Kitari with your warming spices as well. This is the best thing to have in those early days. Now, I have it in my meal bundles, and often my customers will take the Kitari to hospital with them
Really?
because, yeah, they'll either. So, what I really advise is that if you're birthing at hospital, and even just to know anyway, even if you are wanting to birth at home, it's just good to get to know, does the hospital have heating food facilities? Is there a microwave? If there is, then great. You can take in these nourishing meals for that first day, which will really kickstart digestion. I want to petition against toast after birth because it is. I mean, and I kind of feel like it's so sad that we've got to this place where we all go, that was the best thing. You think, wow, all the foods in the world, and we're kind of satisfied with a bit of toast. It's because that's protocol. So we just sort of accepted that, like, oh yes, that's just what I wanted. Well, it's not what your body needs. So ideally, you can take in your dal or your soup to heat up, or when you're in labour, when you're in that early labour, one of the things on your partner's checklist is heat up the dal, heat up the soup, and put it in a flask and take it with you. Hopefully, your labour is, you know,
Short.
yeah, or even, I think these flasks can like keep your food warm for what 24 hours. So hopefully, but yeah, so it's kind of thinking, right, well, if I'm birthing in hospital, what am I going to eat? Don't accept just eating the hospital food because it's not, you can take charge of that
Yeah.
and you can change the script on that,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, so Kachari is a winner, basically. Kachari's
Love
great,
this.
or even just a broth. Yeah, a broth with some rice in it, or with some rice noodles in. Um, just something really hydrating, soupy, hydrating, and yeah, lots of yummy spices in.
Love that. Love that. And then, Kate, before we say goodbye to you today, we always ask our guests to share one tip and one product based on the conversation. So if you were to leave us with two nuggets, what would they be?
So tip would be, um, the tip would be when you have your baby shower, although you're probably not organising it, but you can always give a preference, can't you? Is, what can we make together to contribute to postpartum nourishment? So instead of doing these ridiculous baby shower activities that have absolutely no impact on what happens next, I think at mine, did we like taste baby food? My first one, it was like,
Oh my
what
God.
is this? Oh my gosh, terrible. Can we make tea together, or can everyone bring something for the postpartum pantry? You
I
know,
love that.
um, I think it's just, and when we're asking people to make food for the freezer, send them a recipe. I think it now is not the time to be kind of, just hoping that they cook you the right thing. It's like, I need this. Please, can you make that? Can you make that? Meal Train is a fantastic website where all of your loved ones, or your local community, sign up, and they kind of assign which days they're going to nourish you, and that might be people locally making food, or it might be people, using a food service that's local to you. So I think it's like, yeah. Sorry, this is a long tip, but the tip is really just being unapologetically asking for what you actually need and what's going to make a dent in impacting a positive postpartum.
Oh,
Recording stopped.
really? Mine is still recording. Very much so.
Oh, it stopped. It's done the countdown again now. So it's okay. I
Oh.
think it's back on.
So weird. Okay. And then, and what about one product?
One product. Oh, I'm gonna have to think about this. Sorry, I haven't prepared this.
Don't worry.
Oh, product. Hmm. Okay, one product. I'm going to say, if I'm looking at it from a nourishment point of view, I'm going to say collagen,
Love it.
because you can add this. It's tasteless, flavourless, dissolves in hot or cold water or things. So you can add it to your cup of tea, to your hot chocolate, to any meal throughout the day. So you can, it's super easy way to have like a really good injection of nourishment.
Love this. Love this. Thank you, Kate. And Kate, for anyone who wants to reach out to you and find out more about what you do and the services you offer at the Food Doula, where can they get in touch?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Food Doula, and you can find me on my website, which is www.thefooddoula.co.uk. And yeah, you can find out about the meal offerings I have, the herbal collections, the pantry collections, and the bespoke cooking that I do. So I support people for longer periods of time, sometimes sort of 6 weeks for postpartum, for
Love
like
this.
fully immersive, deep nourishment.
Love this, Kate. Thank you so much. And God, I can't even talk now. And as always, everybody, you can find us on Instagram at We Are Mother Tongue. If you've liked today's episode, please feel free to rate, review, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you, so do feel free to leave us a comment. And everything that we have discussed today will be very much linked in the show notes, so please do feel free to reach out to Kate and ask her any more questions that you may have. Kate, it's been so lovely having you on Mother Tongue today. Thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom with us. And thank you so much for sharing all these great tips for my own postpartum. I'm so excited to implement them all. I think we're just going to have to get you back to discuss more postpartum things in the future, because I've loved it.
Yeah, definitely. All the best for your postpartum.
Thank you. We'll be seeing you all again next Tuesday. Thank you.